Well, thank you all for joining. Today we'll be providing an overview of the Transit Tech Lab, more information about our open challenges, and then we'll be hearing from some transit agency leadership. And then at the end, we'll have some time for Q&A. So my name is Yasmin Lalani, and I am the program director for the Transit Tech Lab. And I'm also joined by my colleague, Stacy Matlin, who is VP of Innovation at the Partnership for New York City. So if you have any questions, there's a Q&A chat function, so feel free to pop it in there and we'll be moderating those at the end. Great. And I'll also say this session is recorded, so we'll be sending it out after the presentation along with some relevant links. All right, so what is the Transit Tech Lab? So the Transit Tech Lab is housed under the Transit Innovation Partnership, which is a broader public-private partnership between the Partnership for New York City, which is a nonprofit dedicated to advancing economic development and innovation within New York City, and the MTA, North America's largest transit system, if you are not familiar. So since 2018, the MTA has been using the Transit Tech Lab as a tool to work with some of the most innovative companies in an expedited fashion. And while the program started with the MTA, the rest of the region has followed. So now the Transit Tech Lab works with 4 leading transit agencies in the region. So the MTA, also the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey Transit, and the New York City Department of Transportation. So we're in great company. And this year, the Transit Tech Lab focuses on different challenges every year. And this year we're focusing on human capital and operational efficiency. And how we came to that was we surveyed leadership across our participating agencies to identify some communal pain points and opportunities for growth. So, we're really, when we put out the call for applications, we're asking 2 questions. How can we best utilize human capital resources? And how do we utilize new tools to increase operational efficiencies? So who should apply? We found that growth stage startups, so those who have already found product market fit, are generating revenue, have customers in other market segments, so not necessarily transit, or are working with other transit agencies, are the most successful. And I recognize that human capital and operational efficiencies are pretty broad. So we have a list of kind of some example use cases for human capital. Some highlights are, tools to improve recruiting, onboarding, upskilling, productivity, tracking, and then retention. But there's a lot of other use cases here and also listed on our website. And then for operational efficiency, again, very broad bucket. Some highlights are predictive maintenance, tools to prevent fare evasion, data analytics, data management, and then again, a ton of other use cases. So we invite you to kind of explore those, in more detail on our website. And I'd also like to note that this is not an all-encompassing list, and we're not seeking a prescriptive solution. So we want innovators to come to us and tell us what solutions may be applied to kind of the public transit space. So if you have a solution that kind of fits within one of those 2 broad buckets, please do apply. So, who is eligible to apply? As I mentioned, growth stage companies we found are most successful. We're really looking for companies that have products that are mature enough to pilot with one of these large agencies. And again, company's product doesn't have to be necessarily designed for a transit system. For example, data analytics and management, that can be applied to a bunch of different spaces. So we do, really want to kind of think about these challenges as broadly as possible. I'd also like to note that our 4 transit agency partners have different terms and conditions. They're all listed on our website. I'll be sending those out via email after this call, but those are, some things to explore. And, in the application, you're welcome to apply to one specific agency or all of them. So it's really up to you. Right, so moving on, how do we evaluate applicants? So we have a great group of public and private sector evaluators who will be reviewing all of these applications. And we're using 4 application criteria, all weighted evenly. So, impact, will your product have a positive impact on performance or customer experience? Your product, can you present metrics that kind of show market fit, and ideally paying customers? And do you have paying customers illustrating product market fit? And we're also looking at team and value. And so what are the benefits of applying to the Transit Tech Lab? So broadly speaking, we've heard from startup alumni that they wouldn't have engaged with the public sector without the Transit Tech Lab. And that's because, as a startup, it's sometimes a little bit challenging when you have limited resources to work with public sector agencies, mostly due to long sales cycles and, the fact that some of these procurement processes can be a little bit time and resource intensive. So, we have a pretty simple application. It takes about half an hour to fill out. And just by applying, you're getting exposure and feedback from the 4 regional transit agencies we work with, as well as our private sector evaluators, which consist of subject matter experts and venture capital institutions. So I feel like, one of the things that I get really excited about is just by applying, you're really kind of showcasing your product and your company to a broad audience. And once you're accepted into the program, it's 8 weeks, and you'll be receiving a customized plan from your transit agency partners to evaluate technical integrations. And you'll also have a series of kickoff meetings to establish expectations. You'll be able to tour respective operational centers at all of these different agencies. As appropriate, you'll be able to shadow day-to-day tasks to understand product use cases. And then you'll have weekly check-ins that are very feedback and communication forward. So it's kind of a safe space and program to kind of get feedback on your product and company, and kind of understand product market fit in more depth. And then you'll also get guidance on procurement, legal, IT, security requirements. And at the end, there's a final presentation to senior leadership across agencies. So it's also great exposure. And if that 8-week program and POC is successful, an agency can select your company to move forward to conduct a year-long pilot to demonstrate your technology. And I'll note that while the pilot is unpaid, we do work with NYSERDA, which is the New York State Research and Development Authority. And they have, opportunities to kind of provide funding. All right, moving on. So there's some key dates to keep in mind. Applications are due March 2nd. As I mentioned, the application process itself is not very time intensive. It takes about half an hour. It's hosted on a portal called F6S, but we do encourage you to apply early, because if you apply early, you have an opportunity to ask myself and Stacy questions, so we can kind of make sure that your application is as robust as it needs to be. It also reduces room for error. And then afterwards, so after the application period closes on March 2nd, we'll have semifinalist presentations. Those are in person, so please block off your calendar. They're March 29th and 30th, and they consist of 10 to 15-minute pitch presentations to our public and private sector evaluators. And then from there, we'll invite a subset of those semifinalists back again in person on March 31st. And that's just an opportunity to kind of demo your product and to a larger audience, and allow people to kind of explore your technology in more depth and ask more questions. And then we'll invite our finalists and participants in the program to an 8-week POC, which begins May 1st and runs for, again, 8 weeks. And then the POC participants who are invited to a year-long pilot. They began their pilot on October 9th. So hopefully that was helpful in kind of giving you an overview of the program. I'm happy to answer any questions via email or in the chat, but now I will turn it over to some of our transit agency leadership, starting off with Lizette. And I'd love for her to introduce herself and maybe spend 3 to 5 minutes kind of talking about some of the challenge areas and ways that she kind of foresees working with the Transit Tech Lab this year. So over to you, Lizette.
Hi, everyone. I'm not sure if you can hear or see me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So, thanks so much for the invitation, not just to speak, but for us, DMTA, to participate in this challenge. I'm Lisa Camilo, the Chief Administrative Officer, and the people organization within the MTA report up to me. As we are coming out of COVID and looking at reestablishing ridership across all of our operating agencies, one of the linchpin areas that we need help is finding the people to do the functions, to run the trains, to make sure that our service is being provided to our customers. The area that we have selected for help in this challenge really does link to our civil service administration on the exams. The overwhelming majority of the way that we hire folks within New York City Transit, and for those, just to make sure that we're all working from the same information, MTA is comprised of a number of operating agencies like the Long Island Railroad, Metro North, but Transit is our agency that runs the subways and buses for the city. Is highly regulated, requires examinations to be administered, and for interested candidates to apply, they have to take a test. They have to apply, they have to pay for the test, they have to show up, take the test, pass, get on a list, and then wait to be called. So the process is fairly labor intensive from soup to nuts. From an organizational perspective, administering those exams is a logistical challenge and really tied to paper and pencil based exams. We have to go out and get schools and ensure space, literally make photocopies of the exams. And these are things that in the year 2023, we feel can be done more efficiently. But obviously we want to make sure that we're preserving the integrity of the process and have a lot of security components to any other option to administer these tests. So one of the areas, the areas that we put forth in this challenge is to see if there's a way that we can leverage technology to allow for the administration of these exams remotely. So it would be having people take the exams from their homes, but we want to make sure that obviously they're not cheating. So the security component is of prime importance here, along with the ease in administration and the ability for us to canvass and collect more applicants so that we can hire and move forward with improved service. So that in a nutshell is what we're the problem that we're trying to solve for. And we really are hopeful that this engagement will yield some help in that manner and will allow us to move away from the paper and pencil mode of administering these exams. I'm not sure if there's anything else you'd like me to cover.
No, that was great. That was really helpful. Thank you. And we might have some questions for you at the end.
That sounds good.
Great. Okay. And now we can move on to Chris. So just quick introduction and then maybe some pain points you'd like to talk about.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me here. Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Pangolina, and I am the Vice President of Paratransit here in New York City for New York City Transit. So for those of you not familiar, paratransit is our third mode within New York City Transit: bus, subway, and para. We provide shared ride origin destination transportation services for people with disabilities who are not able to use the bus and subway due to disability. We provide about 30,000 trips per day So we are the largest paratransit provider in the United States. It is a lot of people. Obviously, it pales in comparison to the 4 million on the subway and about 1.x million on the bus. But it is still a lot of people that we do schedule rides for. And the way it works is paratransit is an ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act mandated service since 1990. So there are certain rules and regulations in place of how we structure our service and what we allow or not allow our customers to be able to do. So the customers, from their perspective, they must first become eligible for our service through our eligibility process. We have similar paper issues that Lisette was mentioning in her world. We also, but once they become eligible for our service, they can then reserve rides a day before or 2 days before, and then set their origin and destination, and we facilitate that ride the next day. So it's relatively simple on paper what we do, but there are a lot of pain points and things that we want to improve with paratransit, namely that paratransit is an expensive per trip mode, not just here in New York, but in the rest of the country, because of course there's lower productivity with the vehicles as they are more individualized, even though they are shared ride services. So there's a higher cost per ride. There's efficiency that could be gained in the way that we schedule our trips. So again, we get about 25 to 30,000 trips by 5 p.m. the day before. And we need to, match basically a traveling salesman problem times 30,000 with the vehicle fleet that we have and get those rides to be efficiently scheduled. And then the same day, the next day when those trips are being executed, being able to optimize that schedule when people are canceling trips or somebody might need a change in itinerary. So we also want to improve the processes in which people reserve their trips. We do have an MyMTA app, which we're looking to scale up with our customers, but right now 95% of our customers use the phone to reserve their rides. And then we also have a lot of internal processes that we need to improve to make ourselves a more leaner, stronger organization, which I can get into more detail if anybody has questions about that, but to improve the way that we deliver services from an internal perspective. So again, our service is very important for people with disabilities who can't use fixed route, 30,000 trips a day, broad questions. How can we make that a more efficient service? How can we make it more customer friendly for people who are reserving those trips? How can we go above and beyond the ADA potentially? And then internally, how can we improve our own processes to make that process easier for us to deliver those services? So again, that's the summary for us, and happy to go into more detail later should people have questions.
Thank you, Chris. Very helpful. And then we'll move on to Tom.
All right, thank you. And I'm grateful to be here with you today. Just a little background. I'm the IT manager supporting agency-wide applications, and that includes PeopleSoft that we use for HR and payroll. And for our human capital analytics, we use currently Visier. Now, of course, the business, we want to attract and retain new customers, and it's the same for human capital. We want to attract and retain the best employees. And some of the agency-wide initiatives at the Port Authority include diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's one. And another one, employer of choice. And the employer of choice one really focuses on one of our main challenges, and that's retaining and rewarding the best employees. Another challenge that we're having is that we have the shrinking labor markets and the high turnover, particularly in this time where we have a lot of people retiring and others. So some of the particular challenges with the time to fill, or the challenges with the turnover is the time to fill vacancies. In the public sector, it tends to take longer than the private sector. Also, we have the challenge of replacing experienced staff and the time for onboarding. Now, the last 2 years, we've spent quite a bit of time in streamlining and automating the process for onboarding. And of course, the metrics are really important to that. How are we measuring that so that we can improve that? Another challenge we have is balancing the hybrid of remote work opportunities. Now, I would say this doesn't apply to all staff, and the vast majority of people who work for the Port Authority have been on site all the time. For instance, 20% of our workforce is the Port Authority Police, and of course they need to be on site. But so we have a high percent of people who've had to work through the pandemic and be on site, but also a lot of the others have the experience of working remotely, and how we're going to balance that, and that really involves making some decisions about being an employer of choice. So I think one of the challenges that we could look at now is the first impression that people have when they want to apply for a job. If they come in, and of course everything's online now, and you want a website that's easy to use, that answers the questions clearly and makes the application process easy. Because if you have a process that's too complicated or too hard to follow, it's going to discourage people right off the bat. So we want to look for something that's going to be a nice presentation, and one that will encourage people to want to apply. Now, I mentioned that we use PeopleSoft primarily for our HR management, but we are also looking at a lot of tools for add-ons for recruiting and some of the other processes needed to identify new workforce and new opportunities there. So those are some of the challenges and some of the opportunities that are here at the Port Authority, and hopefully we can get some potential on how to help us with those. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, great. So now we are going to be moving on to questions and answers. So we had a handful of pre-submitted questions, so I will go over those first, but then again, please feel free to pop additional questions into the Q&A chat. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Okay, great. All right. So starting off with the first question, can you give us more information about the application process? What is the acceptance process once someone applies? So again, I mentioned the platform, the application is hosted on a platform called F6S, which is a pretty standard platform for startup accelerators. So you might be familiar with it. And it is also very streamlined. So as I mentioned, it'll take about 30 minutes to fill out that application. And then once you submit that application, public and private sector evaluators will review it, and then scores are compiled during the month of March, and then agencies will then select semi-finalists to participate in the in-person pitch presentations, which again are about 10 to 15 minute presentations to the evaluators that looked at your application. And then we'll invite a subset of that group to participate in a demo day. And then agencies will kind of regroup and select winners to participate in the program, where they'll kind of explore POCs for 8 weeks. And winners will be announced in early April. Okay, so next question, tell us more about the proof of concept phase. So as I mentioned, it's a 8-week period of time, and the objective is to arrive at a decision to move forward to a year-long pilot. And we make it 8 weeks because we want to create some urgency and structure that kind of facilitates a meaningful proof of concept in a short period of time. And programming includes tours of operational centers, as I mentioned, and then meetings with agency leaders and program support from Transit Tech Lab staff, including myself. So next question, best case scenario, how would a pilot benefit from selected startup pilot partners? So pilots, as I mentioned before, are unpaid, but there are grant opportunities with NYSERDA, and companies that participate retain all IP. Transit agencies get to license products for the duration of the pilot period. And, the lab presents an opportunity for companies to kind of get their technology in front of decision makers in New York's major transit agencies. So really, if you're chosen for the lab, it's a chance for the companies to kind of refine your tech and kind of customize it for transit agencies in North America generally. So it's a really great opportunity to kind of get exposure, get feedback, and then, potentially pilot and kind of move forward from there. And then another question we have is, what is your track record for deploying products? So we've had 23 companies complete pilots with regional transit agencies, or for 4 regional transit agency partners. And of that 23, 6 have gone on to deploy their technology in a commercial capacity. Another question we have is, do you need to be a USA-based business to apply? So the answer is no. We're encouraging applicants from all over the world. However, you must be registered to do business in New York. And so we have more detail on our FAQ page about that and what it takes to kind of get that required registration. So I'll be sending that out via email after this call. All right, another question we have is there monetary or a revenue threshold that defines early versus growth stage companies? Not so much. I think what we're really looking for are companies that are mature enough to kind of pilot their product with a large transit agency. So mature in the sense of team, finances, and then actual product. So we also have a question about, who's eligible to participate. So this is specifically from a former NYCT employee. So I think it's, if you're eligible to work with the MTA, you can apply. So Mike, I don't know if you want to add anything to that one.
I'm not sure, was that directed to me?
Mike Woshner. Oh, he's on mute, or maybe he doesn't have anything to add. Oh, good. Okay, great. Great. And then, any specific questions around that, just feel free to shoot us an email. All right. Next one is, is there any interest in solutions for resilient data management and security across distributed devices and systems? So short answer to that is yes, and that would fall under the operational efficiency bucket, and we do encourage you to apply. Another question we have is, are MTA buses using dash cams and AI safety alerts to improve safety across the fleet? So there are dash cams on buses. However, there is an opportunity to incorporate more AI components. So again, we do encourage you to apply, I think, specifically to the operational efficiency challenge. We also have some questions around pain points for addressing operator employee assaults, and then disruptions currently handled during operations. Those are questions we're going to circle back with our transit agencies, and we'll add them to our FAQ page and let you know when we do. We just want to make sure we're giving you a robust answer for that.
I have a question here that came in. I think this one is for Chris. So does New York City Transit paratransit combine some trips with a fixed route bus rather than paratransit the whole way? Or do all paratransit trips consist of a door-to-door ride?
Yeah, thanks for the question. We could do either one. Right now, we are geared toward not using fixed route. So taking the person on paratransit from A to B the whole way. Just as a quick background, we've tried doing the other, where we link some eligible customers to fixed route, but the connection wasn't that great all the time, and it didn't save us as much in efficiency versus the this benefit, if you will, that the customers were getting. So currently right now we're purely on origin to destination.
Great, thank you. We have a question. Can one participant submit 2 different innovative product solutions for 2 different agencies? Jasmine, do you want to take that?
The answer is yes. You can. Short answer, but yes.
Right. And then I know we rapid fire did a lot of Q&A. Do any of the public sector speakers want to touch on any of the questions that were discussed or add any additional context? No. All right, I'll hand it back to you, Yasmin.
Great. So I have some questions that maybe Stacy, you can also help me answer. So it's some direct messages. So we have a question. Technology must be at least in beta version. Please define what a beta version means to you.
So what we've seen to be most successful in the past is technologies that have already found product market fit, meaning that they already have a customer that has already used a product, and maybe there's a new feature of the product that is in beta version that's being tested, and that's great. But really, 1, product market fit, and 2, making sure the technology isn't just brand new to market.
Great, thank you. And then we have another question. What is the main difference between the POC phase and the actual pilot? So the POC phase is an 8-week period of time where you're kind of looking at defining a scope of work and kind of exploring the option to do a year-long pilot. So this is really just kind of like introductory feedback, kind of exploration of your technology to then kind of go in a longer period. Sorry, you muted yourself. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to make it clear that there still does have to be a demonstration where, you know, it's on a much smaller scale than the year-long pilot, but we do generally test out the technology in a small area or an element of it for that 8 weeks.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to read this question out, and then Stacy, if you want to tackle it, or any of our other participants. So with IT software, how is the tech evaluation and legal processes streamlined for this engagement versus going directly to the MTA or another department?
So at least I can talk about the process that we work with the MTA and Port Authority. So that is one of the key benefits of the Transit Tech Lab, that we do have a streamlined process to work with the legal team and the IT department, and we guide you through that. So if selected for a pilot, there's a clear process for how you would negotiate the terms and conditions, and then also IT security, and we facilitate those meetings. We make sure that everybody's on the same page. And Port Authority has a very efficient process as well. So we make sure that those concerns are met, and they're addressed both from the agency side and from the startup side. And when we successfully facilitated 23 pilots in the past, so we know how to work with the various agencies and their IT security requirements.
Thank you. All right, another one. Is there a specific data standard that must be integrated with proposers, since this includes some operational solutions that might end up interacting with technologies at the agency? Anyone get that?
If none of the public sector speakers have anything immediately to say, we can circle back on this one.
Great.
Did you want us to reply to that, Stacy?
If you can, Keith.
Yeah, so we actually would prefer to work with things that are going to be in some sort of standard format. So JSON, or, you know, depending, well, if you're going to be working with a system that would interact, say, with PeopleSoft, we would want to make sure that it's in a standard format that PeopleSoft would be able to accept. So it's going to be on a case-by-case basis, but we recommend adhering to industry standards.
Same with paratransit.
And just to clarify, that's for the Port Authority. Keith is from the Port Authority.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Port Authority, yes.
We have a question here. You mentioned that the proof of concept is unpaid. If our solution is a software-based solution that requires design and setup, can we still charge for expenses in our trial period? No. The proof of concept phase especially is not a paid engagement. There's no opportunities for payment. For the year-long pilot, there are opportunities around, we work with NYSERDA and there's grant funding opportunities available and you can apply for funding with that. And then we have a question, another question, how is technology IP handled / managed over the proof of concept and pilot? So for the proof of concept phase, we have a set of terms and conditions that govern the relationship between the agency and the startup. So please go to our website and review our terms and conditions because that will govern all of the IP concerns there. For the pilot phase, there's a separate pilot agreement that both the agency and the company execute, and there's specific IP discussions and provisions in that pilot agreement. We have another question around NYSERDA funding. So is there an expedited process for NYSERDA funding? So we have a direct relationship with NYSERDA, and in the past they've done a variety of mechanisms, either through a special PON or through direct funding, and we make sure that we work with them. NYSERDA is able to provide grant funding for successful companies that apply to their program. And so we have that access, and NYSERDA is the one who selects successful companies for funding, but yes, there is an expedited process.
I have a question here. Maybe I'll pass it to some of our agency representatives, and Stacey, if you want to tack on. What advice do you have for companies new to the competency and skills required for transit workers? I work with a company providing talent and career management tools for libraries and library workers based on competencies for library work, which might be adapted to the transit agency.
And I'm sorry if I'm not answering the question directly, but how does it sounds like an additional offering that might benefit the MTA overall, and that's something that, you know, I think is outside of the scope of the challenge. Is that that's what it sounds like, right?
Yeah.
So we could, you know, we're happy to, you know, take stuff offline if that's the case.
So I think the rest of the questions I have on my end are specific to specific companies. So I think what we'll do is we'll just we'll send those answers out after this call.
We have one more question for Chris. What tools does MTA use to understand paratransit travel patterns? Is data visualization and exploratory analysis an area you'd be looking to improve?
You know, right now we use Tableau, which pulls data from our trip system, which is provided by a different vendor. And so we have all of our origin and destinations, the time of departure, whether the trip was on time or not, et cetera. And it's all in our database, and we have some visualization capability right now in Tableau. I would say there's probably a bit of a field to work in there in terms of turning, I think it's an untapped resource in terms of how we could use that data set, whether it be visualization or other analysis, to examine how much better we could plan our service or resource or uncover different issues that might be geographic or time-based origins of the problem. So yeah, there's definitely places to improve there. I would say if there's a proposal in this space, it probably would be great, obviously, to work with our existing data set, but then to propose different ways to answer important questions or different ways that maybe Tableau cannot do, or better ways to use Tableau. So I've kind of put that all out there.
Great. I have one more question I received in a private message around, you know, is NYSERDA funding guaranteed? What type of dollar amounts are the grants? So dollar amounts really vary from year to year and from company to company. It's very company specific, so cannot give a specific number. And then no, grant funding is not guaranteed. It is, you have the opportunity to apply to NYSERDA for grant funding, but it is not guaranteed. But happy to answer any additional questions regarding that. You can reach out to us and we can provide additional context.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining. We appreciate your time. I'll be following up via email with the recording of this session and then some relevant links. And then the questions that we haven't answered, we're going to circle back up with our transit agencies and then publish them on our website. And then we'll also notify you just so you have that information as well. Please, if you have any other questions or just want to chat about whether or not you're a fit for the Transit Tech Lab, please do email me. I'm happy to speak further. Great. Well,
I just want to jump in. I do strongly encourage, not implore folks to be truthful on any paperwork applications that you're submitting, particularly on financial health and investment information. It will obviously prevent any bumps in the process of participating with you from our agency.
Yes. And then also just thank you for all of our transit agency partners for joining and answering questions. We also appreciate your time. Great.
Glad to be here. Look forward to this year's challenges. Forward to the applications.
Thank you. Likewise. Okay. I'm going to end the session now, but again, feel free to reach out.
Thank you.